afternoon, everybody. We hope you're enjoying this summit so far. How are things going so far? Okay, still got some energy? Only on day one. Okay. Well, I like to think of the summit as our homecoming for higher education in Kentucky, right? So that's why we're really excited that you've chosen to join us this afternoon. My name is Stephanie Chung, and I serve as the Associate Director of Transfer with the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative here at CPE. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Transfer and Completion panel. Now, I know we're going to have some great dialogue together today, but before we just jump right into things, I do want to share a few quick slides with you to help contextualize our conversation. Is that okay? Okay. So I'm coming to you all from the Collaborative. And the Collaborative is a unit that was created by CPE in 2021 in order to accelerate progress on student success outcomes in alignment with these key strategic priorities. Of course, for our presentation today, we are focusing on the intersection of transfer and completion. So if you need to check if you're in the right spot, that's what we're talking about today, okay? Now, as many of you may know, transfer is a long-standing area of policy and practice in Kentucky. Right? It's not something that's totally new. And while we will not be diving into a detailed timeline today, I did want to highlight a few key components for you. So these are our three guiding documents framing our transfer work in Kentucky today. Of course, we have our guiding legislation in the form of KRS 1642951. This came out in 2010. How many folks were here when that, how many folks were working in transfer or here in Kentucky at that time? Okay, a few of you. We have our general education transfer policy that was released shortly after in 2012. And then more recently, our Kentucky transfer strategy, which was developed in 2023. So this last document actually has three main objectives. The first is to center student needs in the pursuit of all scalable solutions to transfer. The second objective is to strengthen institutional collaboration and partnership. And our third main objective is to remove barriers to credit mobility for all Kentuckians. So this is Kentucky's kind of transfer policy, if you will, in a nutshell, okay? Now, I did also want to share some data with you. These, I would say, are the key performance indicators whenever it comes to conversations around transfer student success. And this might be a slide that some of you are familiar with, right? Some of you may have seen this before. I'm a big believer of attribution, so CCRC, thank you. But essentially what it's saying is that for every 100 or so community college students in any given cohort, right, you have about 80% of those community college students who have a desire to pursue a bachelor's degree. However, only about 33% of those students actually transfer to a four-year institution. And then about 16% of those students end up obtaining that. Currently, the collaborative is working with the University of Kentucky and in partnership with KCTCS on a qualitative research project. And we're really interested in learning more about intent to transfer and why students who have completed an associate's degree do not go on to transfer within one academic year. So that's something that we're really excited to share back out with you folks, and we're anticipating the study results later this fall. Please keep us accountable. Please email us. Please ping us. You know, it will not be a bother. We really want to share this with you. And we do have all 16 KCTCS campuses participating in that study. For the purpose of our conversation today, I'd like to invite you to kind of hone in on the latter two metrics. So what you will see here is that the transfer out rate and the bachelor's degree completion rate has remained relatively stable or flat. Right? Sometimes we say stable, and that sounds better. We would love it if the economy were more stable, or maybe, anyway, you fill in the gap. But it's been relatively flat, right, for the last several cohorts. So you're looking at our fall 2007, fall 2015, first time in college cohorts. This is from CCRC, I believe it's national data. And what you're seeing is that 30% and about 15% respectively for the transfer out rate and the bachelor completion rate, okay? So let's say we fast forward a couple years, we get to a little bit more recent, fall 2017 data. This is coming from NSC, the National Student Clearinghouse. And what we're seeing is that these stats remain, again, relatively unchanged, right? So Kentucky is lagging the national average in several areas, but we know that there's a lot of great work happening in transfer in Kentucky. And of course, as Dr. Thompson mentioned, we also know that there's more that we can do to improve, right? And learn and grow with each other. So that kind of brings me back to why we're here today with this panel, right? We're here to chit-chat. We're here to talk about what's working, what we're seeing on our respective campuses. We do have representation from our four-year publics. Unfortunately, Corey Brook from Somerset couldn't make it today, but Sandra's proudly representing our KCTCS. We've got Kristen Hornsby from Thomas More University. I created all our lovely placards for you. If you're near the front, you might be able to see them a bit better. But we're really excited to talk to you more and share out some of these best practices, right? Dr. Thompson wanted you to leave with something in mind, leave with a call to action, so that's definitely something we want to kind of reinforce and encourage for all of you. Like I mentioned, this will be an interactive conversation, so I do invite you to take out your phone, right, scan in on Menti. Please join us for some of this dialogue. And as I moderate the panel and we walk through some questions together, you'll also have a chance to share your perspectives with us. And I'll encourage again and remind all panelists that we have that slide in the back, so if you want to jump in and make reference to something that the audience has shared, please feel free to do so. Finally, we have the lovely Cassie Bradley, who serves as a senior fellow with the collaborative at the back as our mic runner as well. Okay, sound good? All right. Just gonna grab our mic. Okay. I know, you guys are sharing too. We're gonna share this. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome colleagues on the floor. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the panel today. This would be much more boring if it was just me talking to myself. I know we all get the chance to work together, sometimes in our day-to-day, definitely about transfer. But for folks who are meeting you for the first time today, please introduce yourself. Tell us about your role, your institution, and how your role gives you a unique perspective on transfer and completion.
My name is Kristen Hornsby. I am Associate Director for Dual Credit and Transfer Pathways at Thomas More University. How many of you have never heard of Thomas More? I figured there'd be a few. Yep. So we are a small private Catholic liberal arts institution. We are located in Crestview Hills, Kentucky, about 15 minutes from Cincinnati. And when I joined Thomas More about a year and a half ago, they really didn't have much in the way of any sort of transfer unit, transfer office. So they said, please come build it for us. And that's been what I've been doing for the past year and a half.
Good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Greenwell. I am the Senior Director of Academic Affairs Advising Strategy at Eastern Kentucky University. And so my role, specifically working with transfer students and all of our students, but specifically transfer today, is how can we connect our students with their advisor, whether that's a professional advisor or a faculty advisor, and make sure that they are getting that handoff and they are getting the support that they need when they get either on campus or online.
Good afternoon, Sandra Kimberlane, Elizabethtown Community and Technical College. I am the director of the Robbins University Center and Transfer there. I'm also a CPE fellow for transfer. I've also worked at a research one, actually this one. And so I feel like I have a little bit of a, the transition piece. I've seen it on both sides. And while I might be the only one from KCTCS up here, I see some friends in the audience. I can't represent all 16. I can only represent what I have been through. So if somebody else wants to jump in, I'm going to let you please join me.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Sarah Conwell. I'm the Assistant Director of the Adult and Transfer Center at Northern Kentucky University. Our role within NKU, and specifically with transfer, is working with them all the way from inquiry and all the way through the admission and onboarding process to the university. And then our office, we kind of stay on as additional support and advocacy for our specific adult and transfer students who are coming through the pipeline.
Hello, I'm Michelle Barber, and I'm the Director of Retention and Academic Advising at Morehead State University. We also oversee first-year seminar, too. We work really closely with our enrollment services counterparts to partner to try to provide the best possible scenario for all of our students, but particularly as it relates to the transfer student. We try to meet them where they are. And they come with a whole gamut of issues, which we'll talk about in this session today. And it's almost impossible to meet all those needs, but we certainly try to anticipate and proactively support the students as best we can.
I'm Jarrett Murphy. I'm the Associate Director of the Transfer Center at Western Kentucky University. In my role, we act as a bridge for those transfer students coming in, trying to get them to the appropriate people on the academic side so that way they can be taken care of as best as possible.
Great. We are going to try to give the people what they want and kick things off with what I like to call big picture trends. Okay. So what are these big shifts that you're observing right now in transfer policy, advising, or credit mobility? What are some of the trends?
I will start because I'm at the community college, right? So that's kind of where that conversation starts. And I've noticed a trend in participants for my transfer fairs. We have the transfer portal at the four-year institutions, and we have the demographic cliff, and I do think those two things are playing more of a role when it comes to 4 years being interested in the two-year transfer student.
So you mean you're getting more 4 years come out to
Yes,
the
some that have
transfer
never
fairs?
participated before, more and different.
Well, kind of tagging onto that, especially with the transfer portal and things like that, I'm seeing more and more students coming through with more than one prior institution. They have been to multiple places. 2 is usually the minimum amount of transcripts that I'm seeing on the applications, which of course makes advising so much more complex.
Say at EKU, we're seeing the same thing. Students with a lot of transfer work, bring it on. We're also making some changes in-house to our general ed curriculum and our degree programs to try to make it a little more friendly. But the big piece we are working on under Cassie Bradley's leadership is our credit for prior learning and recording that work and then looking at some of those industry certificates and different things like that that students have had, and how can we help a student with a joint service transcript with some training they did to see if that is equivalent to what they're trying to do.
At Morehead State, we're seeing, too, more students coming to us with multiple institutions they've attended, and that makes it really tricky from the advising perspective. And it also can be an adverse effect for the student because the curriculum doesn't always translate equally, even though we try with the general education realm. But what we're doing on our end is trying to work more closely with the academic departments and make sure that that's a seamless partnership across the board. It does take a little more work because we will ask, can you evaluate this course? Could it be applied differently? Because it pains me to see any student come and not really be able to effectively use the credit that they've worked so hard to complete. So that's one of the areas where we've really started to see more and more, and we're trying to head that off as best we can.
I'll piggyback on the credit for prior learning at NKU, as well as the multitude of transcripts that are coming through. We're seeing a lot of transcripts from institutions that we've never had students transfer from before, so that is taking a longer time when it comes to course evaluation, course equivalency, so having to work out with the various departments across campus for that articulation, for that review, and equivalency determination. Credit for prior learning is huge, especially for all of our adult and transfer students. I see a lot of nods out, and yes, everybody knows. So along with what you're doing at Eastern, industry credentials, work certifications, portfolio options, even though those are small, mighty few. but really trying to hone in on where we can give credit where credit is due. They've earned that credit. They've gained that knowledge in one way, shape, or form. So really trying to see how we can build up a more robust credit for prior learning database to where we can make these an industry standard at the university, but then also really looking to see how we can expand upon that within our colleges and departments.
So within my area, okay, Stephanie's works well. Feel like I'm on a radio show now when I've got the mic stand. So within my area at WKU, we've worked really hard to create relationships with the departments on campus. And I think that's the biggest thing with any of our roles is having those relationships with department heads, with deans. I say that, I've got one sitting in the front of here, to make sure that they understand the importance of the transfer students and what they bring to the university. And when we can really relay that importance and they buy into that, that helps that credit transfer articulation. That helps those equivalencies. That just helps those students in the long run. So it's really building those relationships and helping them understand the importance of that student's success.
Okay, so there are certainly shifts that help to propel students towards completion, but also things that we're observing or changes in the workforce that might make completion more challenging. Can you tell us about a specific program or practice at your institution that has been demonstrated to improve student completion?
I'll jump in. Since we are a private institution, our general education does not align with the rest of these guys. And so one of the first changes that I implemented when I started at Thomas More is I went to the curriculum committee and I said, okay, we are not going to get transfer students if the classes they've taken the first couple of years don't count for anything. And so we were able to approve a general education certification policy. So if they take all the courses and are certified in the state of Kentucky, Ohio, or Indiana, we count that towards our version of Gen Ed, with the exception, I will say, of philosophy and theology, since they felt that that was very core to who we were as an institution. But I think that's made a huge improvement in making sure that the courses are meaningful and are transferring in a meaningful way.
Off.
You're back. So sorry.
It's cantankerous. There it is. Okay. I will not move this hand. One of the things that we're doing at Morehead State is it's relatively a new launch for us in the last couple of years is MSU Online. And I'm going to quote my colleague, Jen Timmerman, on the front row here. She has said for years and years, transfer students are students too. And so we sometimes tend to think that they're not, but it's because their needs are so vastly different. And one of the examples of that is providing the flexibility and the online realm for that particular learner. And here's the other flip side of that too. They may not always have the resources and the ability to start in the online environment. And so we've got to provide them with those resources and that additional support if need be too. So that's one of the programs that we have in the last couple of years really intentionally launched to make sure that we're meeting that need.
And that's what we do at Eastern with our online students. When an online student transfers and they're online, we are connecting them immediately with their professional advisor, and that is their person through when they graduate. And we become that person, and sometimes we become that person for the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years that they're there because they're asking us questions about financial aid and we're phoning friends. But we really try to connect the students to the person that is going to help guide them through their curriculum. We are also starting that with our on-campus transfer students as well. We're going to start that this fall to try to connect them to an advisor, faculty or professional advisor, who can be their contact. And because I think we have always done a little bit of assuming that, oh, they know know how to college. Well, they maybe don't know how to college with us. And so what can we do to help them feel connected and help them feel like they're a kernel and be intentional with those relationships that they're building with faculty and professional advisors?
It worked. So when the Adult and Transfer Center was created in 2023, one of the first things that we really wanted to do was really kind of strengthen the relationships that we had with our local community college partners. Being in Northern Kentucky, we are a border state with Ohio and Indiana, so we have the opportunity to go to what we kind of consider our big three, our top three community college feeder institutions. So with the 3 transfer advisors that my office has, they each have a community college that they are assigned to, that they go and attend and have satellite hours, if you will, twice a month at that institution, where those students can directly contact somebody from NKU, build a relationship with them, connect with them. They are my point person. I'm either in a pathway program where I know I'm transferring to NKU and I need help along the way, or I'm considering it, I don't know what I need to do, but you're from NKU, so I'm going to connect with you and ask you questions. So it is great that we have those immediate connections and relationships with those students right from the beginning. That way, as they consider that transfer process, they go through the admission pipeline. Our office, we are the point person for them all the way through the admission and the onboarding. So by the time they get here, we've already done everything, and all we have to do is seamlessly hand them off to their academic advisor within the college, who is then going to take them where we leave off, they pick up and carry them the rest of the way.
And I am seeing, too, on the Mentimeter there, that proactive advising seems to be the number one thing that folks in the audience find is effective for improving completion, right? Followed by curriculum alignment and articulation. So I don't know if there's anybody on the panel who wants to speak to either of those topics. If not, we'll certainly make sure we address them in upcoming community of practice meetings as well. Any takers?
So obviously not everybody's curriculum is going to align. So what we've done at WKU to try to help this, because transfer portal, like everybody talked about, we're seeing more and more transfer students. If a student comes to us from another 4-year regionally accredited university, and they have completed their general education requirements there, we have put into practice as Gen Ed certifying them with us. Especially, if they're coming from another SACS accredited school, there is no reason for us to question another state's requirements. That has helped tremendously on us awarding credits on moving students towards degree completion, and just getting them a little bit closer and helping them to understand that, hey, you didn't waste time. And when you come to us, we're going to do everything we can to help you get to the finish line. If that's aligning with what they have previously done, then that's what we're going to do.
That was very well said, Jared. I attended another conference previously. I regrettably forgot which session this one was, but somebody had the session title, Earn What You've Earned. I don't know if that's been used elsewhere, but I thought that really sums it up quite nicely. And it's very student-centered, which makes for a good segue to our next question. So, folks, you heard me mention this a little bit earlier, right? One of the strategic objectives in Kentucky's transfer strategy is to center the needs of students in the pursuit of scalable solutions to transfer. So I'd like to ask my colleagues on the panel today, not just how you collect student feedback, because we know that the surveys and the focus groups, we all know that. But how do you elevate and more specifically incorporate student voice into the design of your transfer supports, into your program planning or into your decision making? How do you, take student feedback and make it action oriented and bring it to life?
Worked again. So at NKU, we have incorporated a semesterly needs assessment survey to all of our adult and transfer learners. We've done this since spring of 22, and so we've got a good chunk of data that we are now collecting for trends. we take that data each semester and we take it back to our Adult and Transfer Advisory Committee, where we kind of discuss collectively amongst staff, faculty, administration, the issues and concerns that these students are bringing to us, and then how can we mitigate that, either whether or not it's at a departmental level, an office level, institutional level. How can we take those needs, those issues that those students are expressing that they need help with to make their experience better. So on this needs assessment, a lot of our students say that they have issues navigating our systems, right? Like you can't school. So I can navigate KCTCS, but I've never navigated NKU. How can I do that? So instead of them being a student and then realizing that they're having issues, how can we get that in front of them up, from the very beginning? So we now incorporate that into our orientations. We actually have somebody from our IT tech bar that comes and gives a presentation, a breakout session specifically on Canvas, MindKU, Lockdown Browser, certain things that these students will become familiar with, that they have to become familiar with. So that is just kind of one way that we can kind of get in front of them ahead of time to say, you're expressing these issues. We have these semesters, years worth of trends that are telling me that we're having issues with systems specifically. How can we get in front of you? That way you don't have that issue by the time you are a full student.
One of the that Morehead State is in the last couple of years, Jen had coordinated an orientation that's specific to the transfer student, and that's because that resulted directly from student feedback, that they wanted to know, yeah, it's fine, and a lot of the information is helpful and the same from a traditional age student to what you would have with a non-traditional student or transfer of any like, but they wanted that more intimate opportunity to go through that orientation process. And so we utilized that feedback, we thought about it, and we've crafted an orientation that is conducive just to that type of learner. There's things that need to be tweaked, but that's the feedback. And, we listen to that and we try to respond to that. Some we can respond more quickly than others, but that's just an example of the feedback that we got directly from the student asking for that, and we responded.
At Eastern, we are putting a lot of weight on our professional advisors who are working with online students and asking them to have these conversations with transfer students when they're first talking with them once they're admitted. How did it go? What were pain points? What were friction points? And then bringing that back, whether it's to their associate dean, to have a conversation that we could try to navigate and remove that roadblock. But we're also, some of our programs, not all, are doing program meetings to be able to have conversations and talk about trends they're seeing with students who are coming in, to be like, hey, could we look at making this change to the curriculum kind of across the board, because we're seeing this course coming in from KCTCS that you're giving credit to everybody. Can we just look at making this change? And also with our credit for prior learning, are there some MOAs that we can look at doing? But we're including the students in those conversations once they're admitted, and then taking that to our faculty into leadership to be able to have these conversations. Another piece that we try to do specifically with our online offerings of courses is to look at our course calendar and ask faculty to plan a little bit in ahead to be able to tell a student, like, look, you need this Homeland Security capstone course. We offer it every fall B term. So that then the student knows that, okay, I will use myself. They'll be like, okay, Lindsay told me this course is offered, so I know, and I've got it in my plan, that if you don't take HLS 495 in the fall, you've got to wait a whole year to get it again online. But again, that's relying on a lot of partnerships with our faculty to have those conversations, or if we need to make a change or add another section of the class to be able to help the students get out quickly and efficiently as possible.
Just quickly from a personal perspective, but also professional. So a lot of times we don't hear from our transfer students after they head off somewhere, but if we do, it's probably because there's been a problem. But one thing I will say that I've heard more recently as four-year campuses are becoming more and more experiential, career-based, work-based, et cetera, is that not only transfer students, but dual credit students who bring in a lot of hours need that career help right away. And this, a conversation with Lisa Cox in the back with EKU, and our senior fellow team, we realized like this is a lot bigger issue, and it's becoming more and more of an issue because the students aren't getting that support and conversation about the internships and all that stuff from the first 2 years that they would have had they been a native student. So I would encourage, I actually would like to start some kind of statewide group to help those students that have a lot of credit hours, no matter if they're freshmen or transfer, but keep that in mind. But that would be something I'm seeing from a personal, my son, and a professional standpoint, that they need that career help right away.
And I just want to thank the panel, too, for shouting out, some specific kind of groups or demographic groups of our transfer students. We know our students are not homogenous, much like our institutions are not. And so I know, Moorhead, you are looking at military students, right, support for veterans, and EKU, we talked about online students, dual credit students, first-gen and transfer students. Certainly important to keep in mind as we pursue those scalable solutions, right? It's not always a one-size-fits-all. Now, I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about transfer technologies and platforms. This one can be a little bit unwieldy, so we also don't need to spend a whole ton of time here, but we all know that technology plays such a big role in what we do in higher ed, and with transfer, it's certainly no different. So what technological platforms are each of you using at your institutions? But more specifically, have you been able to be creative or innovative with, streamlining things with technology?
So I think most people up here and a lot of people in the room have utilized the transfer equivalency system test. Since that's came into play, it makes everybody's life so much easier because it's all there. It's accessible to students. Okay. It gives students the access to be able to look things up, and then it helps them ask the right questions as opposed to just general questions, and you try to lead them to where they need to be. Another thing that my office has started playing around with is a little bit using ChatGPT, because I said we were checking transcripts for gen ed completion at other schools. Sometimes that gets a little tricky, and it gets very time consuming when you're looking and they've got stuff from all over the place, but hey, they've been at Sam Houston State and that's where they're transferring from, and trying to figure out if they completed everything at Sam Houston State. So I've been randomly testing ChatGPT to see if I could load a transcript, and it picks up to see if they've completed all the general education requirements from those other four-year schools, and it's not been wrong one time. I've probably ran at least 100 transcripts through there just this past January from football players. Which, yes, everybody. And obviously I'm doing hand audits on those two just to make sure they're correct, but it's been 100% so far. And that's just the general everybody ChatGPT. That's not the paid version.
I need you to teach me your ways there. So there's a running joke at Thomas More that if you need something done, give it to Kristen because she'll do it. But not to toot my own horn, but when I got in, there was a mess. The equivalencies were a mess. There was literally a binder in the registrar's office that had all of the equivalencies. And so it's taken a little time to clean everything up, but as of last week, we did launch TES on our website. So for all my KCTCS folks, you can now see how these courses are going to transfer to Thomas More. So I wanted to pop the champagne when that happened. But yes, we're also using Slate, and something that made me nervous when I first started is Mongoose Cadence, if anyone's familiar. It is a text messaging system. I was so hesitant at first. I didn't know how I felt about students texting me all the time, but they really do engage more using that platform, particularly from the admissions side of the house to ask their questions, and sometimes mom and dad ask questions there too, which is great because they know that they can get a quick answer that way.
Say at EKU, we use Slate for a lot of things, and we're lucky to have one of our Slate analysts, the top Slate analyst here with us. And I know she's working with Cassie for our credit for prior learning to streamline that for our students. We have also started this is going to sound real basic, but it's a game changer. We have started processing petitions faster. So when a student is bringing in a course and it's like, ooh, was that a gen ed? I'm kind of known for, well, I don't think it was, but let's try. And put in a petition to get that process quicker for the student. And the notification process is quicker for faculty and department chairs to review. So I think that's going to be really kind of big for us to be able to do that. To get some of those courses evaluated a little quickly and for them to see where that is going to land in their degree works audit.
I can close this one out. I was sharing with some of my colleagues earlier this afternoon that I was on a Let's Talk Transfer. It's like a community of practice that College Source hosts every month or every other month. There were 168 attendees on this call. Now, it's across the nation, but it was a 1-hour call, and the chat was going nonstop, guys. It was like questions, answer, what are you doing? Have you tried AI with this? Have you tried that? Oh, we met with that vendor. It sounded great, but when we tried it, it didn't pan out, right? So just the wealth of knowledge that was shared on that open source call. I know I'm not with College Source, but 160 attendees representing dozens of institutions across our nation, and there were, I think, upwards of 25 to 30 different platforms referenced, right? Which gives me pause when I think about the scope of work that entails kind of trying to find the best solution that works for our state. So many of our institutions do use tests, and I know Dr. Bell is in the room. She serves as our Vice President for Academic Excellence at CPE, and Dr. Bell and myself are looking at, again, how can we use tests more effectively, right? How can we bring together some of our system reps, maybe have a joint training and orientation? How can we leverage our auditing a little bit more? How can we shorten the time duration, the amount of time it takes to actually finalize an equivalency? There's a lot more that I think we're, excited about. I also know that our friends at U of L last year around May went live with a program in Parchment, and this was through Smart Pandas Raptor. I see somebody put up Raptor on the screen as well, that has AI pull courses from PDFs of transcripts into, I guess, their SIS or whatever platform. And so, by the words of Jenny Sawyer, it's taken their transcripting process sometimes from 30 minutes down to 30 seconds, right? So imagine what that kind of time savings could do and how much time it could open up for us to spend together building rapport with our students or more of the proactive advising, right? I know it's something that we're going to be needing to talk a lot more about and maybe make a suggestion for a track at a future summit. So do pay attention when you're at other professional development opportunities. If you have the privilege of attending, bring some of these insights back. If you're curious about the College Source conversation, feel free to look it up. They post all of their recordings, even the transcripts. It's very good community to stay in touch with. Okay. I think we're about halfway through our questions, but a little bit more than half through our time. So let's see how we do with these next ones. We looked at some of our data together earlier in the slides. So I was curious how each of your institutions use data to maybe pinpoint where gaps exist. Are you able to use data to inform some of your targeted interventions? I know we talked about student voice a little bit earlier as well. Another way that we've been framing this question just in our prep session is thinking about whether transfer students identify as transfer students after they get to the four-year institution. Right? And if universal programming and universal design is more effective for transfer students, or if we still need that dedicated service and programming, right? Transfer student-specific orientation, specific events. So any thoughts about that?
So at Eastern, I think we're always going to be evolving, right? Like, I don't think this is anything we have solved. I think it's something we're always going to look at. Because I think for us, a lot of the data we look at most of the time is those new first-time freshmen, and are we retaining them, and where are they going? But I think we still have a lot of work to continue to do with connecting with our transfer students, and seeing how can we use some of the data and similar processes we're doing for new first-time freshmen. How does that translate to the transfer students, and what are they needing? And like I said earlier, they've college somewhere else. What does it take to college at Eastern, and how can we work with them? So I think we use Slate to take notes on students and to keep track of conversations we have with them. We celebrate midterm grades. We express concern with progress reports. We're kind of doing all these things for all of our student population, but when we think about the transfer students, I think there is always more work for us to do, and to dig a little bit deeper into some of our student referrals and where our advisors constantly referring students to. We can track that, but to even go one step further, and then it's like, okay, well, we're referring a lot of students to our Big East Central office that handles financial aid and billing questions, but are most of those students transfer students? Are most of those new first-time freshmen? And again, I think we've got an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper in the next couple of years to be intentional with our transfer students.
One of the areas where we know that there's a gap in our services that we provide to the transfer student is communication. And so we're looking at ways how we can best communicate with that population to make sure that we are listening and responding to the needs that they may have. That's a definite gap for us, and just like my counterpart was saying, we don't have this solved yet, but we are continually striving and looking at ways that we can achieve and do better with that. So that's one of our areas.
Yeah, got it. Okay. I would echo what you all are already saying. The work is never done, right? Our students are constantly evolving and changing, which means that we have to constantly evolve and change with them. And while we like our students to constantly evolve and change quickly, we are not so quick to do that for them. So really, as far as our office goes, once we hand our students off to the academic advising departments, we're kind of hands off, which can be a good thing, but can be a detriment to the student at the same time, which I think is why we rely very heavily on that data that we get from those needs assessments. That's really a way for us to kind of keep track with how they're doing, what touch points they need help on, and then that in turn can help us determine how we communicate with them, not only as a prospective inquiry student on the front end through Slate, but also using Navigate to connect with them while they're actually a student. Touch points, how are you doing? Scholarship opportunities, that sort of thing, letting them know that we're still here for them, despite the fact that we're not a constant office that maybe they would reach out to as a student who is on the track to graduation.
Just a real quick comment. About 8 years ago, a colleague who's in the audience and I presented at a national conference, and at that time, it was about 75% of students all college students had non-traditional characteristics, at least one. The last I've seen since the pandemic, it's more like 80, 85. So if we can design our supports to meet 85%, we're going to get almost everybody, as opposed to designing our supports to serve 15% and hoping we get them, right? So let's see if we can design to try to get to everybody, and then come at it kind of the other way.
So we take a look each year at where the majority of our transfer students are going as far as majors go, and we create transfer plans based off of that. It's something that we have good enough partnerships with a lot of programs on campus that they've made changes to their programs based off of the amount of students that they have with interest in those programs. So that data is helping drive their decisions Our construction management program made a shift to a little more of the business side, and it's kind of paid dividends for them. Our business programs sat down with the programs at Sky, CTC, there in Bowling Green, and they redesigned their entire curriculum to make sure that it aligned with what was coming from KCTCS. This was probably about 3.5 years ago when they did this, to make sure that those transfer students' needs were met. So again, it's that partnership and showing them the data from the students to let them know that, hey, if you make these changes, success can be achieved at a much quicker pace.
Well, let's talk a little bit about partnerships. I know we've circled around this topic for some time, and our panel, is on the topic of transfer and completion. But if we want to talk about transfer and completion, I think we first need to look at the 2 to 4 year, or really any transfer rate, right? A lot of the times when we're looking at the 2 to 4 year transfer rate, we need to first consider how we're intentionally approaching and nurturing our institutional partnerships. So I'd love to hear, how you're facilitating collaboration both internally within your institution, with faculty members, but also externally, right, with your primary sending or receiving partner.
So one of the conversations we all had as we were gearing up for this, the idea of trust came up a lot. I can't remember which one of you had said it originally. Trust and transparency. And so inside the institution, we have a transfer advisory team where it's really important for us to be able to share, faculty and staff combined, what's going on, what are the challenges we're seeing, how can we work together, and then also, does this problem or success expand towards other groups of students so that we could build from there. Externally, of course, we just launched our Pathways to More, our pathway program with KCTCS, and I'm working especially closely with Amanda at Gateway since they're down the street from us. And so building those connections with the faculty and staff, I told Amanda, I said, I can table and not see a single student, but if I can talk to your staff or your faculty and they get to know me and my institution and our programs, that trust that we're building is going to go a lot further in building the rapport, particularly because they're going to talk to the students about the possibilities that are open to them. So we just did an event where it was a little bit of a get to know Thomas More type event, but then we had our faculty and staff from Thomas More came down to Gateway and got to have some really good one-on-one conversations. And I know our folks are still talking about it and looking forward to future conversations. So I think that was a really special time, and I look forward to doing that more with Gateway, but hopefully with some of your institutions as well.
I won't let it die.
You can let it die. We've got other great questions.
Okay, just real quick. I do think trust and relationship building from the 2-year perspective is huge. I am kind of privileged in that I am one of, I think, 4 now KCTCS institutions that has somebody specifically dedicated to transfer. The rest of them are sharing multiple, sometimes like 3 or 4 different hats. And so students know when institutions show up, either to table or to transfer fairs or do, events or whatever. They know. And the more you can build that relationship with whatever your top sending institution is, with those students and those faculty and staff that are working on it, the more likely you are to have a better and more seamless transfer pathway, because it's just going to naturally evolve.
We work closely with the KCTCS schools in our regional area, and we really focus on getting our faculty out to events that we host at those specific schools, ECTC being one of them. And those students, I feel like they appreciate a little bit that they're talking directly to someone who works in social work, not just myself, or to someone who works specifically in Ogden College of Science and Engineering, not just a general transfer advisor. That title means a little bit to them. And when they can make that connection, that just adds to a meaningful conversation and helping them move towards their success.
Okay. Folks, if you are in the audience, this is your reminder to start thinking about some questions that you have for the panel. And after a couple more from me, we'll open it up to the floor, see if there's anything from all of you, and then we'll have a couple to close this out. Okay. So this next one's about non-academic barriers. Are there any non-academic barriers? And you can even just shout them out, but they'll pop out shortly.
Money.
That you feel transfer students are more likely to encounter and which present a challenge to degree completion. Money, we heard one, yeah.
So at
Scholarships.
KCTCS, a lot of times their financial aid will cover their tuition and a lot of other things, or the work-ready scholarship. So about 60-something% now, I think, from KCTCS are debt-free. Maybe it's up to 70. So when they get to the 4-year and there's not as many transfer scholarships, or they're more competitive or convoluted, or they're difficult to find, or et cetera, tuitions usually double, if not more. Federal aid and state aid only increases a little bit if you happen to have those particular grants. So the sticker shock is probably the number one thing I would say that students are, yes, I'm going to enroll, and I get the bill, and they go, no, I'm not.
I think adjacent to the money aspect for us that we tend to see a lot is flexibility. Our transfer students in particular, all students across the board though really, but transfer students in particular, they really have such regimented time that they could focus and dedicate to their education. And they're willing to sacrifice and carve that out, but they need to see that the institution is also making that effort to provide that flexibility that they need to get this degree in a timely manner. So flexibility is certainly one for us.
I think at Eastern it's life is what I call it. Life gets in the way, whether that's your personal life, it's your work life, whatever that looks like. But then having that conversation with the student when they're calling and they're like, I'm not going to be able to take this class because this, that, or the other, having that conversation with them to say, like, hey, it's okay. Like, if your family needs to take priority for this season, that's great. You know, I'm still going to be here when you're ready to return to school, and let them know that it is okay if you need to take a break. But let's keep in mind, keep that in the back of your mind why you came to school. And I think for some of us, we can get bogged down in taking care of our families, taking care of, things at work. But remember, there's that little self-care, and if earning this degree is part of your self-care, let's not forget, to fill your cup as well, and know that whenever you're ready to try to come back or to try to balance just one class instead of two, we're here to help you, and we're going to be here to help you navigate that.
I will echo and say life, time, money, caregiving, all of the above. Agreed with the degree flexibility. Not everybody can do online. Not everybody can do daytime. Some people need the option to be able to do all of them. I need 16-week, I need 7-week, I need online, I need in person, depending upon what the course is. So I know we can't be all things to everyone, but we need to stop trying to pigeonhole students into doing classes one way or another. We've got to make the change and be flexible for them if we're asking them to sacrifice and be flexible for only the things that we're able to offer.
Real quick on the money piece. If the student is working, not only do you have to figure out the whole tuition and money and scholarships, but now, especially if it's a day program that they're transferring into, how do you overcome that paycheck that they're losing? So that's another important piece of the money conversation.
Yes to everything they just said, and I'm going to add food insecurity. Something Thomas More started with their traditional freshmen a couple of years ago was the Saints Essentials. Basically, it included things into the main tuition price, including even if you're a commuter, you get so many swipes a week in our food commons. And so I think it was last year they rolled it out to transfer students as well. So just little things we can do to help make life easier.
Okay. What about folks in the audience? Did anybody have a question that they wanted to ask the panel? Got a couple hands, and we'll have Cassie coming around with the mic. Right there in the middle. Oh, it would be this one? Say it loud and proud. Yeah.
At NKU, that was something that we had decided to try to put into our communication plans for our students up front through Slate, letting them know ahead of time that if you are first gen, if you are meeting the certain eligibility requirements for TRIO, that TRIO is an office for you. A lot of the transfer visits that community college, will bring up to the campus for a transfer visit for us, we will also bring in TRIO to come and talk to them, incorporate them into that transfer visit to let them know that that is an option for them. Not all, but that it's at least available for them as another resource. What's great about TRIO advisors at NKU is that they get added as a secondary advisor to the student. My office is lucky we're located right across the hall from TRIO, so anytime a student comes in to meet with us for an information session, we're able to directly walk them all to TRIO to introduce them and get them connected. That's one thing that we're doing.
One thing that we do at Morehead State is every single orientation session that we have, our TRIO partners are invited to come and talk with all the students and provide the information. So from the outshoot of that experience, they get to hear about those resources, and then TRIO then gets to pull them in from follow-up after that event.
And was there one more question over here? Or go ahead. I saw this hand.
I'll take this one and keep looking at Cassie and make sure she's not throwing things at me if I'm saying the wrong thing. Yes, we are seeing a lot of credit for prior learning, specifically out of our College of Justice and Safety and Military Science. Even more specifically at our paramedicine program, our emergency medical care, as well as our fire. We have 3 different fire programs. And so a lot of those folks are doing certifications to meet requirements for their state, for their firehouse, whatever it is. So we are seeing a lot of that coming in because they have put in however many hours and trying to, work with the faculty to make sure, our fire programs for years had a portfolio process. Don't throw anything at me. We're changing it, right? Like they're coming into this century to have some, something a little more automated to be able to make sure that, yes, you did those, to meet this requirement and how that can translate into college credit.
Just real quick, Matt Bergman is at this conference, and he's like a CPL expert, but he would also say that at its core, all transfer work is CPL. So if you have trouble convincing your folks that CPL matters, do they believe in transfer work?
And all of our panelists will hang around a little bit after our session closes today just to chit-chat if you have additional questions. I know we're getting close on time, but up next was my favorite part of the panel. So I don't know if folks would like to hear, but we had some rapid-fire questions prepared for you all. Would you all be interested in that, or would you like us to wrap up? And we can always get your responses to rapid fire and share that out through the impact exchange. Yeah? You want to? Okay, perfect.
We try to help be the go-between at WKU between those students coming in with military credits. There's some of it that's built in. We're seeing more and more departments award credit for those JSTs, things they've done in the military, things that they deserve credit for, is the way I put it to different departments. And so I've found it from working with these students, if these students can make a connection with the person awarding the credit, and go and sit down and have a conversation with the department head for physics, they're a lot more apt to get that Physics 1 credit from their explosives training within the military. But it's a matter of me helping them make that connection because they don't know who to go and talk to. So they come and see me. And I really try to push them in that direction because those department heads will sit down and they'll listen to those students and they take a general interest in them. So they want to see them succeed. So they're there to help. It's just the students have to be directed on who to ask the correct questions to.
Oh, we got another one. Go ahead.
I can take that from Morehead State. Also in my title is retention. And so that's retention of all students. And so when there's an issue that emerges, I am absolutely okay with being vocal and pesky. And I will go directly to that source and say, hey, you know, we're seeing this trend. What can we do? Does it need to be evaluated? Do we need to think about this for a while? Or can we take some quick actionable steps to resolve that issue? So for me, it largely boils down to hearing what my staff are saying, the trends that they're hearing and the issues that they're hearing from their students that are sticking points, and trying to take action on that from the ground.
Yeah, I think a lot of institutions have gotten used to doing something because it's what we've always done, right? I don't think that's new to, it's not Thomas More alone, right? And so I think part of it is just making folks aware that something is not working as it should. I've found that most faculty and staff are very open to revisiting policy or procedure if you can explain to them why and how it is not working. And so I've had a lot of conversations with folks reworking scholarship deadlines or reworking existing academic warning probation policies, things that just weren't working for the transfer population and they just didn't realize it. So really just advocating and making sure they're aware is important.
Thank you for all your questions, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. But before we do so, just final words of wisdom, maybe in one sentence, or final call to action for our attendees from panelists.
I think when I'm talking to a student or to their parents, the most important thing that I can do is to not talk to them about, well, what's your major and blah, 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 but what is your ultimate goal, right? And how can we connect them to their community within the campus? So yeah, finding home and community.
Yes, making that connection, that personal connection, and helping the students understand they're not a number. They are a person. They are here. We want to connect them the best way that we can, and we're going to be here to support them. Even if we don't know the answer, we'll help them find it.
Connecting what you said and then what Dr. Thompson said this morning, that we're all on a career path. So we need to think about the career goals first and then back everything up from there and make sure that everything is aligning on that path to get there in the most efficient way possible.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
And just the fact that they know that they have a person that they can come to. I mean, sense of belonging is huge with anybody, but, coming as a transfer student, you can really kind of feel lost and in the weeds, but knowing that you've got your point person to go to that's going to connect you to wherever, that's huge.
I was just going to say exactly pretty much what she was saying, but never forgetting the importance of relationships, because it could be that one relationship with a student that can make or break that experience, and that applies to students across the board.
Keep advocating for transfer students. Not everybody's a cookie cutter, all right? So continue to advocate wherever you're going back to, and make sure that those students get the attention they deserve.
Jared, very well said. Thank you so much. Very well said. All right, well, just a couple quick announcements, folks. If you enjoyed the conversation today and you would like to continue to be a part of the dialogue, there are spaces for you to connect, okay? We'll put transfer back on next year's summit. We'll make it happen, but there are groups you can plug into. A university team we meet monthly, transfer peer team if you're KCTCS, transfer community of practice is open to everybody, including IQ. We would love for you to connect with us. I have our contact coming up, you guys, so all of this will be available on the Impact Exchange. I spoke about that student voice research that we'll share out with you. The collaborative is also funding, very importantly, a transfer improvement communities. So if you would like to know, like, who is my high volume sending or receiving transfer partner, and you want to work together through improvement science and PDSA cycles, right? We plan, we do, we study and assess what we do, we act on it, we continue to be student-centered. This is work that you might be interested in. It's fully funded. It's a program. You would get training and coaching. We would really love for you to be a part of it. We really want to build up Kentucky's capacity to accelerate progress on transfer completion, and we think a big part of that is getting together in these networks, right? High volume sending and receiving institutions to strengthen those institutional partnerships in order to make that happen. So again, free of charge for institutions, and that will be coming out later this fall as well. We can go on for forever, but that's all we got for you today, folks. Thank you so much for your patience. Please get in touch with us, and just one more round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much.